Did you know that there was an early version of this song called Once I Had a Love? It was written about 5 years earlier than this song hit the charts. And this particular song was inspired by the Hughes Corporation and their hit Rock the Boat. This one, of course, is Blondie's Heart of Glass, and it went to number one on the U.S. chart in this day in 1979. 46 years ago, Heart of Glass goes to number one on the U.S. chart for Blondie. Good Monday morning, good election day morning, voting day morning, the morning of the day upon which you will elect a new government to lead us here in Canada. You've got a lot on your plate today, don't you? It is 6 minutes after 9. Thanks for, despite all of those things on your plate, spending some time with us here on the program. I really do appreciate that. I love engaging in the conversations with you. As you know, the minute we begin the show, every day our phone lines are open to you at 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. This is the most interactive radio program you'll find anywhere in this region, and we are always happy for those conversations. I don't know about you, but I find it incredibly frustrating when I cannot get technology to work for me. And then I get frustrated that I'm so frustrated because I don't want to be so reliant on this stuff. But I spent a weekend in London, basically, a couple of days, working days, and it's important for me to have reliable internet service so that I can post things for those of you that might not be listening. I can follow the out-of-town scoreboard so I can make sure that you know those scores and I can satisfy our sponsors and all these other things. It's really important. And I could not, for the life of me, get a reliable internet signal at Canada Life Place in London. And then wouldn't you know, this morning, there's only one platform I've been able to post to. So if you're looking on X or you're looking on Instagram for the Daily Show promo video, it ain't there. Nothing's there. I don't know why. Other people seem to be posting. I can see their posts from just minutes ago. But mine, I've been trying since 7 o'clock this morning. And am I doing something wrong? But then I get frustrated. I'm like, why? Why is it so frustrating? I don't want to be on the platforms anyway. Stupid technology. It's got me. Who's in charge of who? Am I in charge of the phone or is the phone in charge of me? I think we know the answer to that. One more quick thing before we get to your Farwell 5 and enter into our conversations today. It might be early for this, but I just want to put it out there and offer my hope in this regard. And my hope is that this awful story out of Vancouver, where a 30-year-old man is now facing multiple charges of second-degree murder. And we have learned even early on, the Vancouver Sun had some pretty significant detail around the mental health challenges that this man has been facing, what he has been dealing with, including, I believe the number was 8, but multiple interactions over the past year with police in Vancouver and the mental health system and mental health experts. And still, here we are today. Some numbers to keep in mind. Of course, not everyone who suffers from a mental illness is prone to violence. However, if we look at numbers that we know, about 2.8% of people with severe mental illness commit violent acts. That is compared with 0.8% of people without a diagnosed mental illness. So it's obviously higher at 2.8%. And 10% of people with both severe mental illness and substance use disorder commit violent acts. At what point will we acknowledge that there is a danger, and dare I say, an increasing, if not significant danger, to themselves and to others if we continue to let these problems go untreated? It is high time we got serious about this stuff. I hope that's a conversation that can come not long after we sort through this awful story and get to the next stage of what comes next.
It's the final countdown.
What comes next for us right now is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. Number 1, it is Election Day. Polls open in less than half an hour and remain open until 9:30 tonight as we make our choice as to who is best to lead this country. Number 2, a controversial pride flag motion comes before our Catholic School Board again tonight. The motion asks that not just the pride flag, but any flag other than the Canadian or Ontario flags not be flown outside or displayed inside Catholic schools. We'll be talking more about that on the show this morning at 9:30. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 today, a report recommends that Waterloo follow Kitchener's lead and ban the sale of fireworks within the city. The report, to be considered by council next Monday, also recommends restricting the use of fireworks to just 5 days per year and doubling the fines for their improper use. It is also next Monday when Kitchener will consider what it already considered at committee and wants to move forward with, a ban on the sale of fireworks in the city. Number 4 on your Farwell Show 5 today, the suspect in the deadly Filipino street festival attack that killed at least 11 people in Vancouver on Saturday night has been charged with murder. The attack happened around 8 Saturday night when the suspect drove an SUV into a crowd, sending more than 24 people to hospital. A 30-year-old man now faces 8 counts of second-degree murder. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, the Kitchener Rangers right back on the ice tonight, just 24 hours after a 6-2 loss in London that put Kitchener down 2-0 in the Western Conference Final Series. The Knights picked up wins on Friday and Sunday on their home ice, and now it's up to more than 7,000 of us to give the Rangers the home ice advantage. If you can't make it to the game tonight, we've got you covered starting at 6:30 with your Harris Law pregame show. And Paul Fixter and I will stay on the air after the game to take your calls on Rangers Talk. It is a big day. Dare I say, as much as I love sports and I love our Kitchener Rangers, the biggest part of the day, of course, is the vote. Get out there. Flex your democratic muscle. Exercise your franchise. Make sure you cast a ballot. If you don't cast the ballot, you don't have any right to complain, right? Isn't that what we usually say? But speaking of complaining, how did you feel about the 11th hour, let's call it, push to get voters out to the polls, to remind voters that there is one party that represents change and you should get out and vote for them? It was a very visible presence of conservative supporters on the weekend trying to rally us to cast our vote for Team Blue. And at least one of you didn't like the tactics. We'll talk about that. And you can let me know what you thought, what you saw this weekend when it came to that final push on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I received an email very early this morning, which is one thing that gets my spidey sense tingling, and another of the things that gets my spidey sense tingling is that the email is unsigned, aka anonymous, unless I can read something into the rather obscure name on the email, but I can't. All I can get out of it is the initials JV, as in Jason Victor. I'm not saying this person's name is Jason Victor. I'm just giving you the words to back up the letters, JV. So we'll go with somebody whose initials are JV and get your thoughts on what he or she has written under the subject line, some interesting content for you. Maybe you find this interesting. Maybe you find it boring. Maybe you find it a great big nothing burger. But again, my spidey sense got to tingling. At 12:36 this morning, JV sent the following email to me. Good day, Mike. I know you will already have prepared a show for today, but I couldn't help but ask for some opinions of your listeners regarding the barrage of what I would call unsafe, unwanted, and unethical tactics by the, now brace yourself for this, Conservative/Reform Party on Saturday in Cambridge. From speeding pickup trucks traveling down Highway 24 with conservative flags flying, displaying disparaging remarks of the Liberals, likened to the Freedom Convoy antics that plagued our capital, to a large presence of men bombarding all exits and entrances to a local grocery store where solicitation is prohibited. They were all dressed in blue with embroidered jackets displaying slogans to elect Pierre Poilievre as Prime Minister and handing out blue conservative shopping bags with similar slogans. It goes on at great length. I wouldn't have time to read all of it, but you probably saw this push on Saturday by the Conservative Party to remind you that if you want to vote for change, you should vote for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. JV's email goes on to get into Stephen Harper now coming forward. And this isn't recent, it's not new. It's recent enough, I guess. The last few weeks we've seen and heard those commercials of Stephen Harper saying, I have worked with both Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, and I can say unequivocally that my support is for Pierre Poilievre. We've heard all of that stuff. And so JV is not exactly thrilled with that and points to some things under Stephen Harper's watch that he or she didn't like. But what I like is the very end, after a lengthy email criticizing this effort on the part of Conservatives to get out the vote today, to remind folks, if you want to vote for change, you should vote with the Blue Party. And JV sums up their email as follows. As Canadians, are we becoming desensitized, too critical of others, too disrespectful? We're known for being peacekeepers. Let's not forget who we are. Why are we letting the Conservatives direct the narrative? Let me just go back to the beginning of that. Are we becoming desensitized, too critical of others? My experience may have been different than yours, and that's why I'm happy to hear what your experience was with this all-out effort on Saturday. My beloved and I were out and about, visiting, enjoying some time with family and friends, and on our travels, came past along Highway 8, headed out towards Cambridge. Some of the pickup trucks that were festooned with Canadian flags and slogans, and I was oblivious to the fact that it was a big rally day. My beloved was aware and let me know that's what they were up to. And I just thought, well, good for you. You want to get out there? I mean, it's 48 hours before the election. What better time to remind people the party that you think they should vote for? So it certainly didn't impact my day. It was noticeable to me, which I think was kind of the point. And last I checked, there are no rules around getting out there and encouraging people to vote for the party you think they should vote for. I remember on election day, one day, a municipal councillor who won his seat. He was a first-time elected municipal councillor then, and stood on a busy street corner with, I can't remember if he was, I don't think he had the sandwich board on, but was there like waving, holding a sign, vote for me, and that was on election day. One person in a municipal election, I'll grant you, but this is the party machine at work. Certainly didn't bother me a whole lot, but JV didn't enjoy it. I don't know if you saw it or what your experience was, but whatever it was, we're happy to hear your thoughts on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. You may have heard over the weekend that the city of Cambridge is beginning today an education campaign under the banner, Pause Before You Park. This education campaign will, according to the city, feature helpful parking tips, easy to understand visuals, video storytelling, and increased enforcement of parking bylaws. If you've been following the news in Cambridge, you might know that there has been some challenges with the head of the Accessibility Committee, who has since resigned his position because he gets frustrated that with a son who is disabled, he needs to find one of those parking spots for people and families who are disabled or have disabled children. And every time he's looking for those spaces in the city, he can't find one. So I would think that this is a response on the part of the city to that problem. People parking in those handicapped parking spots when they're not supposed to be there. And while I appreciate the education campaign, I think we all know that we're not supposed to do that, right? Oh yeah, I'm just running in for 5 minutes. It's not the point. The point is those spots are reserved for the people who need, emphasis on the need them. And yet, because we oftentimes think only of ourselves, we just grab that spot because it's only going to be 5 minutes. So while I applaud what Cambridge is trying to do here, I'm afraid that we can't legislate common courtesy. I wish we could. We know we're not supposed to do these things, but jackwagon's going to jackwagon. And I don't think any amount of education is going to change that at this point. But I will remain optimistic, okay? I'm going to get you to the 570 News Centre for an update, and then let's talk about that pride flag motion that comes to the Waterloo Catholic District School Board tonight through the lens of a transgender woman. She joins us next on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. There is a lot going on today, along with the federal election and our chance to vote. Polls now open. The Waterloo Catholic District School Board will tonight debate a motion put forward by Trustee Conrad Stanley that, if passed, would allow only the Canadian flag or the Ontario flag to fly in front of or be displayed within Catholic schools in our region. Now, that means, and this has become a story about the pride flag, but it also would include the Indigenous Every Child Matters orange flag as another example, but certainly the pride flag gets the lion's share of the attention here. So let's have that conversation as we're joined by Julia Malott, who is a transgender person, writer, and speaker on gender identity and ideology. Also, I think it's okay for me to say, a friend. We've known each other for a number of years. Julia, good morning.
How are you, Mike?
I'm doing just fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad.
Glad to hear that. When you heard of this motion and that it was going to come before our Catholic School Board for discussion and debate, what crosses your mind?
I think when I heard that this motion was coming forward at the Waterloo Catholic Board, I suspected that it would probably blow up and become a political matter, as it certainly has. We've seen this play out in Dufferin Catholic in Mississauga. We've seen it play out in other school boards, and there's very strong feelings on both sides, which I think is why it's important we're able to have these conversations, and important that we're really listening to all these perspectives as we sort out complex political and ideological matters like this.
What perspective do you bring to a conversation like this as a transgender person yourself?
So my observation is that when this conversation comes up, we get two very strong sides. One side that says we must have flags like this everywhere in all of our institutions because to not have them would be hateful. And we get another side that sometimes can come in very strong, kind of implying that the signs themselves are hateful and that they can't be there. And I really try to avoid both of those more extreme positions and say flags, things like this, symbols, they do mean something, they imply something, and that isn't the same for everybody. So to navigate this, it's complex, and we have to kind of look and say, what is the best way to make sure that everyone feels safe, that everybody can learn, that everybody can grow? And there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. It depends on the context. It depends on kind of how those signs are being utilized, and it also depends on whether we're talking about banning it from being on the property, whether we're talking about the school not specifically endorsing them but allowing students to. And in my experience, those nuances is really where a lot of the solutions come forward.
In that light, Julia, it almost sounds as though, because we don't have a one-size-fits-all approach, it sounds like if that flag does fly outside a school or is displayed inside, we're not really serving all then. Am I reading that correctly?
I would certainly agree with that to some people, this flag is a sign of acceptance. This is a sign of love. This is a sign of knowing that they have a place. Myself, being transgender, I would challenge that. I would say that flag has become very commercialized over the last 5 years of Pride, and really you see it in many stores and places where there's no meaning behind it other than that this sells. So I would challenge whether or not that truly means that. But I would also say that it does come along with a certain set of ideological beliefs. When you look at the intersection of religion and LGBT matters, there's strong opinions on both sides, and I would prefer to create an educational environment where we kind of enforce that everyone is accepted, everyone has a place, but yet let the school stay absent from taking a position. The same thing we've done in the public board, where we've said, you are welcome to come into the public board with your hijab. You're welcome to come in with your cross necklace. You're welcome to be your whole self, including your religion. But the school itself tries really hard not to take a position. They're not going to put up a cross, and they're not going to put up any other symbolism that would make certain people feel like maybe they don't belong. And I do think there's an argument here that in some ways this has happened when it comes to things like pride flags.
Is that then perhaps to say that this should be an individual as opposed to institutional thing? In other words, along the lines of what you just said, Julia, you can present your individual self within this institution, within this building, and we will accept that individual self.
That's absolutely the position that I put forward when it comes to Trustee Stanley. He's a friend of mine. We've spoken about this at length, and that's sort of what I put forward. Is students ought to be able to express themselves, and as long as they do so in a non-hateful and a non-threatening way, they should be able to do so. So if you want to wear, the pride flag and shirts and other things that symbolize that, I think that it's essential that we protect that. However, the same rule doesn't apply to the employer and to the institution as it does to those individuals who are receiving the education.
How is Trustee Stanley, that friend of yours, feeling these last few weeks since the issue was first brought forward? It's been a lightning rod, to say the least.
Absolutely. I can't say with any certainty what he thinks, but I suspect that going into this, he knew that it would be a lightning rod. And what I can say is that the conversations that I've had with him, they've been intimate and personal. We were up to 4 a.m. one morning as we talked through a lot of the stuff, and I talked about my experiences. I talked about my transition, and I'll be forthcoming in saying that he doesn't fully agree with me on everything. But what I have absolutely seen from him is love and compassion, and I believe him when he tells me that he truly wants to work to create a school system where everybody feels safe, and that he does mean that towards trans people and gay children as well, in terms of not eradicating, not making this as the first step towards further policy, but to say, how do we make sure that everybody feels safe in our education system?
In your experience, Julia, as you transitioned and went through this really monumental shift in your own life, where did you find love? Where did you find the support that helped you get to where you are today?
Oh, that I could write a book about that. That is, I think, so much of the problem here is that when you're going through identity challenges and trying to find yourself, you need a supportive network. And for me, I was an adult. I had that supportive network in friends and other social groups that I was part of. For children, that can be really tough. If they come from a supportive household where they know they're loved and they're cared for, none of this matters because they have that network. But if you don't, that's devastating and that's challenging. And I read so much of what schools have done in the last 10 years as an attempt to create that space, which I admire. At the same time, identity matters are complex. And if a child is working towards a transition, if a child is gay and they need to come out to their family, these are matters that require psychiatric support. They require so much more than just a school that has a pride flag. And I fear that rather than addressing the real root of that problem, we're just kind of coming in with a very promotional attitude that ultimately does everybody a disservice.
How do you mean that? It does a disservice because it's performative, perhaps?
I would say, without getting too deep here, if there's a child who has feelings that perhaps they are the wrong gender and that they should be transitioning, that is a huge decision that has implications on their physical health and their mental health. We're talking about possible sterility. We're talking about major decisions that they need support. And if they have a family at home who they can talk to and who can work with medical professionals to figure out the right path, then I'm not concerned. But if they don't, then that's a huge problem. And we need to find a solution in society to give them that support. And the answer of, well, make sure school is accepting, make sure school has flags so that they feel good there, sounds great on the surface until we remember that people make mistakes. I'm friends with some of the detransitioners who are suing our government right now who ended up going on these pathways because their schools promoted it. Their schools, very much said, whatever you feel is right, it's correct, you be you, don't worry about your parents. And sometimes that works. Other times it does not, and they end up in a very bad place too. And I feel that in our effort to be acceptance, we've lost this nuance, and we've just sort of allowed things to move forward from one ideological direction. And I don't say this to say that I think that we shouldn't be accepting and we shouldn't create that place of love, but we've lost the nuance.
Julia, I really appreciate you making time for the show this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Absolutely. It's always nice to talk with you, Mike.
You too, Julia. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Julia Malott is a transgender person, writer, speaker on gender identity and ideology. Let's embrace the individual as opposed to the institution. As individuals, however you present yourself, you are welcome here. You are loved here. That's the approach that Julia takes through her lens as somebody that has transitioned, albeit in adulthood, but thinks that maybe flying that flag just makes us think we've taken care of this. Everybody feels safe and welcome, and we can move on. When, in fact, that may not be the case. Not everybody will feel safe and welcome under that flag. In case you didn't know already, yes, this is a very difficult, thorny issue to deal with. And our Catholic board will do that tonight, deal with it when the motion from Trustee Stanley is brought forward. How do you feel about the issue? Should it be just the Canadian and Ontario flag outside a Catholic school, inside a Catholic school? Again, I know pride flags get all the attention here. That's what's become the focal point. But the Indigenous Every Child Matters flag would also be included among others. Your thoughts always welcome in an open conversation here on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
I have absolutely seen from him is love and compassion. And I believe when he tells me that he truly wants to work to create a school system where everybody feels safe, and that he does mean that towards trans people and gay children as well, in terms of not eradicating, not making this as the first step towards further policy, but to say, how do we make sure that everybody feels safe in our education system?
How do we make sure that everybody feels safe in our education system, asks Julia Malott, who's a transgender person herself, a writer and speaker on gender identity and ideology. Because the reality is, whether we like it or not, some people, some students, when they attend a school or an institution locally and see the pride flag, will be uncomfortable with that, because their faith is such that the flag bothers them. And we don't have to like that. We don't even have to, I suppose. Well, no, I think we do have to accept it. We don't have to like it. But I think we do have to accept it. And that's the problem we run into here. We talk about inclusivity, and that is absolutely the aim of flying that pride flag outside a school, outside another building, demonstrating our acceptance, demonstrating our inclusivity. But Julia Malott, along with Trustee Conrad Stanley, who's bringing the motion before the Waterloo Catholic District School Board tonight, feels as though it's not as inclusive as we might think. We want to accept the individual without the symbol outside the school or within the school. You can present yourself as an individual in whichever way you are presenting, and you will be loved and welcomed and nurtured within this building. I hope that this meeting can be productive insofar as both sides, because there are absolutely two, being heard. It doesn't mean that both sides can't get their way. There will be a vote, and the Catholic School Board will move on. But hopefully we can understand that people can come to this in a very honest and open way, and just from a different point of view. It doesn't mean they're hateful. It doesn't mean that they reject the LGBTQ plus community. It doesn't mean any of those things in all cases. It just means they view this particular situation differently. The Catholic School Board has its work cut out for it tonight, because we've got a federal election happening, and wouldn't you know, a voting station is immediately adjacent to the building where the school board meeting will be held. And if previous meetings about this issue are any indication, there will be a group of protesters outside, maybe inside, as the meeting is happening tonight. And not only do I expect that, I support it. It is absolutely within your rights in this community, in this country, to have your voice of opposition heard on any particular issue. You're going to be there doing that as people are trying to get to the polling station and cast their vote after work. And boy, oh boy, it is going to be a busy time on Weber Street West in Kitchener, isn't it? This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Michael sends me an email to mike@570news.com. It's against the law to hang another flag under the Canadian flag. So if it's on its own pole, I don't have a problem with the pride flag. Well, not really against the law, but there is flag protocol. And I remember, oh boy, do I remember getting into this years ago. And I did find it funny, only insofar as it was pointed out that flag protocol suggests we should fly each on its own. If you do have a Canadian flag, it should be flown on its own pole. And so there was concern that the flags, the pride flag, a Canadian flag, etc., were sharing poles, and they had to be on their own. And then, wouldn't you know it, there were a number of places around, one in Waterloo at a park where it was the City of Waterloo flag under a Canadian flag. I believe that's the way it went. And then on a McDonald's location, they had a Canadian flag and a McDonald's flag flying underneath it. And nobody seemed too concerned about that. But when it became the pride flag, well, then we really became concerned about flag protocol. Nonetheless, Mike's email goes on to say, the thing is, the Canadian flag represents everybody. So why does the pride flag get a whole month and our Indigenous only get one day? Where does it stop? And this is the conversation that it always turns into when we open up the discussion around Pride Month, Pride flags, these symbols and their meaning. Does it mean the same thing to everyone? Absolutely not. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. The Catholic School Board has, since 2021, in this community been flying the pride flag, as have many municipal buildings, municipal agencies, police included, in the month of June. Now, coming to the Catholic School Board tonight, Trustee Conrad Stanley's motion will be debated. He says just the Canadian flag or the Ontario flag. No pride flag, no Indigenous Every Child Matters flag. And not only that, not only the absence of the flag outside the building, but no display inside, etc. Is there a middle ground that can be found in all of this? I doubt it. I just hope that when we are listening in on the discussion tonight and we are watching protesters do their protesting things outside, that we try to tamp down the rhetoric just a little bit and listen with open ears to a discussion that doesn't seem to be going away, does it? You'd think it would have been settled 4 years ago when the Catholic School Board started to fly the flag. Clearly, it is not yet settled. I'm going to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then let's talk about taxes, what the city collects and why it thinks it deserves more tax money. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio. A motion brought forward to Cambridge Council, by Ward 8 Councillor Nicholas Ermetta, asks the provincial and federal governments to share more of the money that those governments collect from property sales, for example, to help cities who are facing much more difficult financial circumstances. Councillor Ermetta joins our show this morning. Good morning, Nicholas.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thanks very much for making the time to join us. Tell me more about the motion. Why did you bring it forward?
Thank you. This motion was it originated in the town of Aurora. It was going around the province to all 444 municipalities. So council would have received a copy of it in our package, basically, when we get updates about other municipalities. And a number of councils across the province have been passing this motion because the system is broken when it comes to funding for municipalities. The current funding model is outdated. It was done at a time when our municipalities were more rural. Now, we're in an urban nation with a lot of needs. And the needs from the residents, they just keep increasing. People want better parks. They want to have better bylaw enforcement or, you name it, right? And these things cost money. And from my perspective, we'll keep looking for efficiencies at the municipal level, but we need help. We need other funding models. So what this motion does, it asks the provincial government to redistribute a portion of the land transfer tax and also the federal government to help allocate some of the GST to municipalities. And as you know, municipalities have the highest amount of responsibility, but we have the least access to funding sources other than things like property taxes, development charges, user fees, but basically a lot of limitations.
So we've heard quite a bit in the last little while, Nicholas, from municipalities. I think regional council through Councillor Doug Craig has really been advocating for this, some sort of new deal. Municipalities need their fair share. Is this along those same lines?
It certainly would be, and Councillor Craig has done an excellent job on that front, so this would fall right into that. And, municipalities across the province, we all recognize the needs, and we're all rallying together to try to create change.
What are the biggest challenges that you see as a municipal councillor when it comes to budget time, when you're faced with the big decisions you have to make? What challenges would you like to see met by getting more federal and provincial funding?
Well, what this does, it gives us more stability. The cost of service delivery, it increases every year. And also we have a number of new residents moving to this area who have higher expectations for service levels than what we've heard from in the past. In Cambridge, for example, we have a parks master plan where we're looking at doing parks differently than what we have in the past. And, this adds to the costs. And so what I would like to see is a more stable funding that municipalities can rely on so that we don't have to keep increasing property taxes, at least significantly, right? That we can have a more stable outcome that the community can be more comfortable with.
You mentioned, Nicholas, that this motion originates in the town of Aurora. It's been picked up by a number of Ontario municipalities. Do you know how many?
That I don't have the number at the top of my head, but a lot. It keeps a new council keeps passing it as we speak, so it's increasing all across the province.
Any sense that anyone at upper levels of government is listening?
Well, I'm not going to speculate. I think the upper levels do listen. Whether or not they feel they can deliver, we'll certainly find that out as time goes along. I'm not going to speculate on what the outcome's going to be. My job is to just speak up for my residents, bring these issues forward. I've heard a lot in my ward about people who are concerned about tax increases, but at the same time, they want to have better service levels. And when I saw this motion, I felt that it would help address their needs.
It was adopted unanimously amongst your colleagues on Cambridge Council. What does that tell you?
I believe council, like we're all in the same boat. We all have the same concerns coming forward to us, and it's not getting any easier, these budgets. And, we can keep looking for efficiencies. So certainly we will do that. And but these concerns and these challenges, they keep increasing every year, and municipalities need help. This discussion's been going on for a long period of time, and we need action now.
Nicholas, I appreciate your time on the show this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
You're welcome. I'll also just add, too, that this is about making better use of the funding that's already there. So it is not an increase in taxes. What it is it's a reallocation of funds from the upper levels of government to use that money more efficiently. And there's also been a lot of downloading over the years as well. For example, Hesper Road in Cambridge used to be a provincial highway. Now it's looked after by municipalities through your property taxes. So downloading certainly has played a role in this as well. But thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, Nicholas. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Nicholas Ermetta is the Ward 8 councillor in the city of Cambridge. I appreciate that last point, but it might frustrate us. So what Nicholas is saying is that this should not mean an increase to your taxes, provincially, federally, income tax, goods and services tax, etc. All this means is that tax dollars get spent more efficiently. Department of Government Efficiency, anyone? And look, you'll get no argument from me. I have long been frustrated. I've asked many times, I would love to. I really would love to see the books because I feel as though we do pay enough in taxes. I don't know. I could be wrong on that. But gosh, wouldn't I love to see the books myself or to have some sort of forensic audit of where the money goes. We've heard far too many stories, and this is where it gets frustrating, of misallocation of or misappropriation of funds to the billions of dollars. Gas plants in Ontario, anybody? Ad scam in Ottawa, anybody? The ArriveCan app. How about the bloated federal bureaucracy? The money spent on consultants. It goes on and on and on. I really do believe, with every fiber of my being, I support this idea that we need a new fiscal arrangement. It's fancy language. We need to figure out a way to redistribute the tax dollars that are collected in this country, federally, provincially, municipally. Because if you've driven around any city in this region lately, any community in the townships, you know that the roads are a potholed mess, that we don't have the amenities we probably could have or that we likely need with our growing population and the demands for parks and recreational facilities, community centers, etc. Well, why do you think that is? Right? Property taxes only go up so much, and frankly, they should. We can't carry the full freight on all of the issues. Certainly when it comes to mental health and addiction, homelessness, cities can't pay for all of that by themselves. So where is the money that the province and the federal government used to share with cities? Where did it go? When those costs, like Hespeler Road, for example, that Councillor Ermetta points out, used to be a provincial highway. Now it's downloaded to the municipality. Well, where did the money that used to be used to take care of Hespeler Road go at the province? Did they just get, consumed by their own largesse? And, oh yeah, we can find another place to spend that money on this, that, or the other thing. I don't know. I feel as though some open books and a redistribution of tax dollars would be in order here. Again, it sounds an awful lot like a Department of Government efficiency. Do we need one? Is it time for this new fiscal arrangement so that municipalities get more money from taxes collected by the provincial and federal governments? Let me know your thoughts on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
We can keep looking for efficiencies, so certainly we will do that. But these concerns and these challenges, they keep increasing every year, and municipalities need help. This discussion's been going on for a long period of time, and we need action now.
Nicholas Ermetta is the Ward 8 councillor in the city of Cambridge, and he brought forward a motion that was adopted unanimously by his colleagues on Cambridge Council, asking that the provincial and federal governments share more. Didn't we all get taught that in kindergarten? I'm reminded of that book, Everything I Need to Know, I learned in kindergarten. And what needs to be shared more is the money collected from property sales so that cities can pay for roads, bridges, public transit, water systems, etc. How about a portion of the land transfer tax and some of the goods and services taxes that are collected during property transactions? Couldn't some of those funds be reallocated to cities so that cities can get done some of the very necessary work that they're trying to get done? And they're trying to get this very necessary work done on the backs of local residents, property taxpayers. And as you can see, I think, by looking around any city any day right about now, it's not really working all that well. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. It gets pretty easy to get frustrated, right? I find myself, and maybe it's just the places that I've been driving lately, but I don't feel as though our roads are in very good shape these days. I think our public transit system is inadequate. It doesn't run often enough or quickly enough. I've used public transit to get to and from work. Takes me about 3 times as long as it takes me to drive. That's not much of an incentive when you're a busy person. You've got other places to be. You need to get from point A to point B to point C to point D to do your job every day, that sort of thing. It just doesn't work with the level of service that we're being provided. And it goes on and on from there. And oftentimes we'll get frustrated with the municipality and complain about this, that, or the other thing. But how much excess is there locally compared to provincially or federally? We've got massive bureaucracies, both provincially and federally. I've argued before, when you take a look at our region of Waterloo as an example, it's one of the largest employers in the region. I'm not sure government should be that. I think government should create the conditions so that people can build businesses and create employment. I don't know that governments themselves should be leading employers in any community. And we can just look to Ottawa. There's been a lot of talk about this, and even the leaders vying for our vote today in the federal election have talked about some sort of trimming of the federal civil service, paring back that bureaucracy in an effort to find efficiency, save some money. And I recognize in all of this, all we're talking about, right, is the money that gets taken out of one of our pockets or one of our other pockets when it comes to taxes. I am absolutely okay with paying my fair share. I want good hospitals. I want good schools. I want good infrastructure in our community. I want things to look nice. I want them to be enjoyable, our communities, places for us to go and relax, enjoy some leisure time, etc. I'm absolutely willing to pay into a collective effort to keep those things operating. But what happens when you don't feel as though those things are operating the way they should, and that cities can't keep up, and that you see people in tremendous states of need on your street corners? Where are we letting them down? And how efficiently and or effectively are we spending those tax dollars that have been collected? The cities seem to be saying, we're on the front lines. We can get the work done. You just need to provide adequate funding. The question becomes, will the provincial and federal governments listen? I have my doubts on that. I have my doubts. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I like Clive's idea, who writes to Mike at 570news.com. Ontario Premier Doug Ford should bring back the car registration fees, and all of those funds should go to the cities that those cars are registered in, as well as 50% of the provincial gas tax. But you know what? There was, $1 billion, they said, that was saved, but the government suddenly decided it didn't need. That's like when we got our, how much was that check worth? $200, whatever the check was we got in the mail. It was more than $3 billion that was whizzed away because, the provincial government didn't need it. Wouldn't that money have been really helpful to cities? Well, Councillor Nicholas Ermetta in Cambridge has brought forward the motion that dozens of other Ontario municipalities will no doubt follow suit on, asking the province and the feds for a greater share of tax revenue so that cities can pay for the much-needed services that residents are demanding. Want to give a quick shout-out and congratulations to those 7 fine folks who were inducted yesterday into our Waterloo Region Hall of Fame. That includes Scott Walker, the former head coach, still part owner of the Guelph Storm for hockey. Scott is a Cambridge native, of course. Mike Poulin from Box Lacrosse, a former Kitchener Sports Association Athlete of the Year as well. Mike's a great guy and a terrific athlete. So too is Anne Benedetti from Field Lacrosse, inducted into our Hall of Fame yesterday. In basketball, Chelsea Aubry was inducted. And then some folks you might know, entrepreneur, philanthropist Barry Abelson, inducted into our Hall of Fame. Mike Bergauer, my former high school music teacher at St. Jerome's and well known to many in the music community, also inducted. And some guy named Ken Sealing. I'm not sure. You heard? He was around for a while. In fact, I believe this ceremony happened at the museum that bears his name. Our former regional chair, Ken Sealing, also inducted into our Waterloo Region Hall of Fame at a ceremony yesterday. Congrats to one and all for the very deserving honor. All right, I have to get you to the 570 News Center for an update, but as you know, busy show for busy people. And before 11 o'clock, we're going to get you updated on Hockey Helps the Homeless Waterloo Region, which is already gearing up for its 12th annual tournament. And right after this update, a new head coach for the Cambridge Redhawks in the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League. And this head coach has a lot of NHL experience he's bringing to the team. We'll meet him next on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers. Well, it was just a couple of weeks ago that the Cambridge Redhawks of the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League made a significant announcement. They've got a new head coach, but how many times are you in the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League introducing a new head coach that's got more than 1,100 NHL games of experience under his skates. That's what the Redhawks are doing as Todd Bertuzzi becomes the new head coach in Cambridge. And Todd Bertuzzi joins our show this morning. Todd, good morning.
Good morning. Appreciate the nice introduction.
Very, very happy to provide that. Really happy to have you kind of back home to do this. What was it that attracted you to the job?
Well, I coached for my son for 4 years in minor midget and their draft year and all that. And then my son has moved on to play in the East Coast and in the AHL. So I wanted to take time off to follow and go to all his games and travel. My daughter lives in New York, and everyone's getting older and moving away. So I took 10 years off to spend time with my family. I played almost 20 years in the league, so I was gone quite often and wanted to spend time with the kids. But they gotten older. They both got jobs and moved on, and I thought it was a perfect time to come back and give back to the area. And I think it's a perfect age group for me, from 16 to 20. And couldn't be happier with the ownership. I couldn't be happier with the staff that we have, and I think it's going to be an exciting time this year.
When you talk about that age group, Todd, 16 to 20-year-olds, and, you know, you've got all of the experience you have at the National Hockey League level. How do you relate to players of that age?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's about developing them as a hockey player, developing them as a human being. I think they're very influential at that age, and I can speak on many experiences that I've gone through in junior and in the NHL. And my task is just to get these guys 10% better, and then I'll hopefully follow up with a lot of wins and bringing a championship to Cambridge.
How does it feel to be coming home, so to speak? I know originally a Kitchener boy, but I mean Cambridge is right next door. How does it feel to be coming home?
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm obviously originally from Sudbury, but I've been living out in this area since I was 15. I never went back, and I consider this home. I got all my family and friends around the area. I think that's what drew me back the most, is being closer and around my friend group from Deer Ridge and having them being able to come out to the games and support our team, but just to be back with them and back in the community. And it was a great opportunity. I think we got a lot of very good pieces coming back. We had a very productive camp this week, and the kids came out and played extremely hard and showed themselves well. So I'm very excited for what lies ahead.
When you think back on your hockey career, particularly early on when you were a young player, who had the greatest impact on you?
Well, I had so many. I was fortunate at the time with the Guelph Storm, with Jim Rooney and Mike Kelly and our ownership group. They were fantastic. I went in there as a young 14, 15-year-old, and I left there as a man prepared for life and for hockey. And Craig Hartsburg had a big part in that when I was with the Guelph Storm, and really prepared me for the real world and for the NHL life. So I obviously owe a lot of thanks to them. And throughout my career, I've had a lot of very, very good coaches. I've had Mike Keenan. I've had Rick Bowness. I've had some quality men who taught me a lot, and I'm going to use a lot of that experience that I was taught by them with this group.
Obviously, the game continues to evolve. It's changed in many ways. In other ways, it stays pretty similar. How do you view the game today that you're coaching now, Todd, compared to the game that you played in?
Yeah, hockey's hockey. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel or anything. It's just it's about structure and attention to detail that some of these kids need to learn, so they can free them up to be able to go out there and play free and enjoy the game. I think it's about communication and discipline, and I think those are the four things that we're going to make sure we drive home with the kids. And like I said, August can't come fast enough. I can't wait to get my hands on the team and get us together and get us ready for the start of the season.
You ready to be on those buses traveling around Midwestern Junior Ontario hockey?
Well, fortunately, I have a Mercedes Sprinter that I've been traveling around the world in. So I've been all the way from Colorado all the way up to Florida. So I've been on the road quite a bit during the winter times, so I'm used to it and fortunate. Our league's pretty close. We don't have a lot of bus rides and all that, but no, I'm looking forward. This weekend was very exciting. I love being in the rink. It was such a positive atmosphere there. The people were excited, the parents were excited, and the kids were excited. And like I said, it's a very good opportunity with a very good organization, first class, and we're looking to do some damage in the league.
What can fans in Cambridge expect from a Todd Bertuzzi-coached Redhawks team?
Yeah, we're going to be very high-flying, very physical. I think, hands down, we have probably one of the best rinks in the league. It's a very small rink, and we're hoping that with our style, up-pace, physicality, smartness, and work ethic, that we can pack that place and make an exciting time on Fridays.
It's not a bad place to call home, that Galt Arena Gardens on Shade, eh?
No, it's awesome. It's no different than the Odd. There's rinks that stand out that you've played in when you're younger and all that. And for these kids to be able to play in a rink like that, it's a great opportunity for them with the history. And I'm very confident with the style that we're going to put out on the ice, that the fans are going to be coming out and they're going to enjoy their Fridays.
Really happy to have you back in the game here around home, Todd. Congratulations on the appointment to head coach, and thanks very much for joining the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on here. And like I said, I'm looking forward to getting everyone out there, come out and support us. It's going to be a very good brand of hockey, and I appreciate your support and your kind words. Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you around the rink. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Todd Bertuzzi, new head coach of the Cambridge Redhawks, joining our program. He was announced just a few weeks ago by the GOJHL organization, and that's a pretty big get for the local hockey club, as the NHLer with more than 1,100 games of experience will step behind the bench at Galt Arena Gardens. What a barn, eh? It's a beautiful spot. We're going to continue in this vein, hockey. When we talk about Hockey Helps the Homeless, the 12th annual tournament is just around it's around a long corner. Let's call it a big bend in the road. But boy, oh boy, preparation's already well underway, and we'll talk about it coming up. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. From hockey in the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League, how about a quick reminder, Rangers playoff hockey tonight. I know you got to vote and you got lots of important things to do, but there is a Rangers game tonight. It's kind of important too. Big one against the London Knights. Pre-game coverage 6:30 here on 570 News Radio. And joining me in studio, gosh, this is a fun one. Except for the first guy I'm going to introduce, Rob Way, who's the chair of the Hockey Helps the Homeless Waterloo Region Volunteer Committee. Rob's a great guy. He just cheers for a really lousy NHL team. But you're welcome here anytime anyway, Rob. Good morning.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm just thinking of what I can say later.
As usual, you can say whatever you want once, okay? One time. Craig Herner is here as well, the vice chair of the volunteer committee with Hockey Helps the Homeless Waterloo Region. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning, Mike.
And Joe Mancini with us, director and co-founder at the Working Center. Good morning, Joe.
Hello, Mike.
Rob, let's start with you. The 12th annual Hockey Helps the Homeless tournament coming up in October. My goodness, can you believe how quickly the time's gone?
Actually, yes. Yeah. It's hard to believe. We've so far invested over $2.5 million, close to $2.6 million into homelessness in the community. So this is an amazing community. And just quickly, we run 21 of these across Canada, and we're top 4. Only, behind Vancouver and Montreal in terms of giving back. So we're just so proud of what this community has been able to do.
Incredible. And you talk about that amount of money. Joe, let me swing it over to you, because I know the Working Center is one of the organizations that benefits from this tournament. What does funding like that help you to do at the Working Center?
For all the organizations, House of Friendship, the Working Center, the Y, Bridges, Roof, One Roof, this money really is the extra money that allows us to do really basic stuff, like have money available to provide extra meals, or to make sure we have staffing to do extra shifts at night. So it's that extra money on top of, we may have some other kind of regular money, but this money really allows us to do the real service work. And it's just crucial. I mean, for St. John's Kitchen, the 400 meals we serve each day, knowing that we have the $58,000 that came from Hockey Helps the Homeless really gives us confidence that we have money to do the work.
It would be nice to think that over 12 years, we've really made a dent in the problems that we face as communities when it comes to homelessness. Sadly, that's not the case. So this becomes even more important, I would guess, Joe, given the situations we face today.
Yeah, the reality is homelessness is something that, affects our communities in giant ways right across the country. That's why Hockey Helps the Homeless has grown. But on the same level, with that increase means there's way more services that have to be provided. There's so many more individuals. Like we're talking about 1,000 individuals locally who are unsheltered. That puts tremendous strain on the system. The fact that Hockey Helps the Homeless local committee really has stepped up to provide resources is just amazing for us. So,
Rob, here we are. I mentioned the tournament comes up in October. I think we're all used to that in our calendar, our fall calendar. But this is late April, and we're already here talking about it because the work really is already underway.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do is we have our event on October 24th, but as was mentioned, it's tough. It's tough out there to fundraise right now, and it's kind of going both ways. It's tough to fundraise, and the need is even greater. So we've come up with some ideas on additional ways to raise funds. So the first thing we have is an NHL sweepstakes. It's called Raising the Cup. And so so what you do if you win, you get 2 tickets to Game 4 of the final, flights, hotel, and a jersey, and some spending money. So it's a system where you can go onto our website, you can get the link to the tickets. And I mean, I can't think of a better place to go to see a Game 4 of an NHL game than in Montreal. So,
well,
I mean,
I thought you said this
incredible.
This would be for the final, I thought you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And rumor has it that you should buy a lot of these tickets because you could be a star if that happens.
That's true. There's somebody at my house would love you even more if it worked out the way you think it will.
And then the other thing we have is on June 21st, we have a golf tournament. So it's your opportunity to get out and try to outdrive a pro or out-chip them or out-putt them and just it's a great day. This is our second annual one. And so last year it's at the Oxford Hills Club. And the folks that went love the club, and it's going to be a great day again.
I've got a wicked slice in my golf swing, Rob. If I'm out driving the pro, does the distance to the left count?
We take a string and we measure it. It doesn't matter.
I might have it. No, I still wouldn't have a chance. Craig Herner, Rob mentioned that we can get information online. I know you're busy keeping socials up to date as well. Where can we find more about Hockey Helps the Homeless Waterloo region?
So, if you go to wr.hhth.com, up in the navigation bar, there's links to both the sweepstakes and the golf tournament, as well as, donating to our tournament itself. And also, if you follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram at HHTHWR.
Room for sponsors still right now? Are we looking for some?
Yes, definitely. Pennant sponsors is our lowest level, which might be more enticing to, some of the smaller businesses out there. But, even some of the larger sponsorship levels are available as well. So, we're definitely looking for that.
What about volunteers as we head into another tournament?
Usually we don't really start ramping up the volunteer ask until, closer to the fall. But, definitely if you want to volunteer, just send us a message and, definitely we'll get you on the list.
I don't know how either you or Rob, after devastating losses for your NHL teams yesterday, Craig, you're a New Jersey Devils fan, and Rob is a fan of the team that shall not be named. It's got to be tough to be in here talking hockey today.
Definitely.
We try to be supportive of you.
I'm feeling pretty good as a Leafs fan right now. So Game 4 of the final.
Yep.
If it's in Toronto, we could get tickets to that too, right?
You could.
With the Raising the Cup sweepstakes?
Yes, absolutely you could. Yeah.
Have you...
It'd be a short drive, but...
the airfare wouldn't really count. We get that helicopter they talked about, right?
Exactly.
Take us in there and beat the traffic. Are you setting a fundraising target for this year?
Yes, we're going to keep it at the $350. I would love to get that number up because only for the reason that it's needed. It's just needed in the community, and it would be so cool to blow through $3 million. If we could raise $450 this year, if we could invest $450 this year in the community, that would be $3 million in 12 years, which I think is just speaks so highly of the community.
Yeah.
So,
but Joe, let's take that a step further too, in terms of the support that this community. We recently had the mayor's dinner, and my gosh, 800 people in that room, and there seems to be, certainly, there's a collective spirit and enthusiasm here to solve big problems.
Yeah, we feel it. We feel it every day.
Yeah.
Nobody likes the fact that somehow in our society, so many people don't have a place to be. And it's a complicated question. It's a question around mental health. It's a question about addictions. It's a question about housing. So these are multiple issues. They have to be, they need the full community to be involved. We're all part of it. When neighbors get upset about homelessness in their area, well, it's our community, it's our culture that's allowed that to happen. But on the same level, we see at the Working Center, all the other organizations see it as well. This real collective sense that we have to solve this together. And, we saw that at the mayor's dinner. It's a pretty amazing feeling. So we know in our community the initiative is there. And I've seen it at Hockey Helps the Homeless. It's pretty amazing to raise $350,000 so quickly. Like last year, it was almost like, what? All of a sudden it was raised.
Yeah.
But a lot of hard work underneath that.
I don't know how these gentlemen, all the other volunteers, pull it off every year, but here we are. 6 months out from the tournament. It'll be October the 24th, but we've got the Raising the Cup sweepstakes. We've got the golf tournament coming up on June the 21st. Sponsorship opportunities are available. Craig Herner, that website one more time.
wr.hhth.com.
So WR for Waterloo Region.hhth. HockeyHelpsTheHomeless.com. wr.hhth.com. Gentlemen, thank you all for being here. Thanks for all of your work, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Joe Mancini, Rob Way, Craig Herner with us on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is time to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then, because it's Monday, it's time for This Week in Music History. Musicologist Brian Allison joins us every Monday at 11 o'clock for This Week in Music History. And look, it's 11 o'clock. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, you're crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. Well, you ain't never caught a rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine. Well, they said you was high class. Well, that was just a lie.
You know what this song always reminds me of for some reason? I really don't know why. Well, it must have shown up at one time or another on the old TV sitcom Happy Days. Every time I hear Elvis Presley's Hound Dog, I am reminded of the sitcom Happy Days, a sitcom that I enjoyed so much when I was a kid. I wanted to be the Fonz. Instead, I became a talk radio host. Every Monday morning at 11, Brian Allison, our resident musicologist, joins us for This Week in Music History. Good morning, Brian.
You are equally as cool as the Fonz.
Really? Are you sure?
Do not sell yourself short.
I appreciate you, my good man. I appreciate you very much. I don't always do it this way, but let's do it this way this week. I like to keep you in suspense a little bit longer. Why did we start with Elvis Presley on This Week in Music History? But heck, let's just start right there. Back to 1957 for the Elvis Presley story, Brian.
Right. And so it was yesterday, April 27th. It was a very rare appearance outside the United States, but Elvis Presley performed at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto, Canada, where he allegedly wore his famous full gold lame suit for the very last time. And it's noteworthy because Elvis only played 3 total concerts in his career outside of the United States of America. They were all in Canada: Toronto, Ottawa, and Vancouver. Those were the only times that Elvis ever stepped foot outside of Canada or outside of the USA on tour, mostly due to his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, not being able to travel with him for various reasons. So we should feel lucky that we got Elvis in Toronto in 1957.
We sure should. And what a venue, Maple Leaf Gardens, to have the show.
Incredible, yeah. And apparently tickets were sold out very, very well in advance. It was a very hysterical crowd, a lot of screaming teenage girls, but definitely noteworthy for that venue to have hosted Elvis in one of the only 3 times he was outside of the USA. Pretty awesome.
I'm a big fan, Brian, of saying if it's too loud, you're too old. And I say that even when I'm the one complaining, like I do in London when we go there for hockey games and they have the volume turned up so ding-dang loud, it makes it difficult for me to think. But I guess the law is upholding us here, at least to some degree, given a decision in a CCR case.
Yeah, so it was 2003 when there was a rather large lawsuit, $5 million lawsuit brought against former Creedence Clearwater Revival singer John Fogerty. A lawyer brought a case to court claiming that his client had suffered hearing loss in his left ear after attending a Fogerty concert. They wanted $5 million. And the judge in that case said, sorry, by attending the concert, and it is a rock concert, it wasn't a church concert, the client essentially dismissed their right to sue because they understood that it was going to be a loud concert. So, the lawsuit was dismissed, thankfully. I think that would have set a pretty big precedent. But some trivia. What band has been credited with playing the loudest concert in history? What do you think, Mike?
I'm going to go with Aerosmith, Brian.
I am going to guarantee you that you will not be able to choose the band that has the loudest concert in history. I would have been like, come on, Black Sabbath, Zeppelin, The Who, maybe a Kiss concert. Some of those were noteworthy for being pretty loud. It was not. In 1998, and again, coming back to Toronto, Hanson recorded the loudest concert on record at 140 decibels.
Come on.
Concert.
Was that all the young women shrieking, or was it the actual music?
Nope, it's the volume of the actual concert.
Wow.
So generally, human ears can tolerate about 120 decibels without sustaining some level of damage, even temporary damage, to the eardrum. This was 140 decibels. So if you can imagine hearing Mbop at 140 decibels an hour, there you go. You could have been at that Hanson concert.
No, thank you.
1998.
I have a hard enough time hearing Mbop at like 2 on the volume dial.
That was kind of my sentiment exactly. But yeah, you know what? Hats off to Hanson. They turned it up. They had it up at 11, and they recorded the loudest concert measured so far in history.
All right. So from the loudest concert measured so far in music history, let's go back to this week in 1977 when we had a record number of people attending a rock concert.
And this was interesting for me because I'm reading it. When I first saw this, I was kind of like, so the story is 77, Led Zeppelin broke the world record for the largest number of people attending a rock concert. At 76,229 people saw them play at the Pontiac Silverdome in Michigan. They had defeated the previous record holder, who was The Who. Same venue in 1975. They drew 75,962. But I was thinking, well, there's been some much bigger concerts than that. No, this is for a single artist. So one artist, not a festival, not an outdoor thing with 30 or 40 different bands playing. Just a single artist at one particular venue. So, but it's not the record for the largest concert in history by a single artist. That goes to Rod Stewart. And Rod Stewart in 1994, and this might be hard to imagine, on Copacabana Beach in Rio, he played to an audience of 3.5 million people.
Wait, what?
Yes, fact. Now, if you've ever seen, you can Google pictures of Copacabana Beach. It is a massive, massive beach. And if there's a large concert there, 90% of the people who are there cannot see the stage. The stage is up against the land part, and people spread out along the beach. But he drew 3.5 million people to this concert, most of who couldn't see him, but were able to hear through satellite speakers set along the length of the beach. 3.5 million people for Rod. Pretty impressive.
That is very impressive and very cool. The stuff we learn with Brian Allison, our resident musicologist, who joins us every Monday morning at 11 for This Week in Music History. I encourage you to follow the Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History. And as we continue this week, on This Week in Music History, a classic artist with his iconic song going to number one. Who is it? You'll find out coming up This Week in Music History on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. On Monday mornings at 11, we are joined by Brian Allison, musicologist, for This Week in Music History. Don't forget to follow along on the Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History, and you'll get tidbits just like the ones we discuss here on the show and more. You know, Brian, I was always more of The Wall guy, but it's not like that was Pink Floyd's only chart-topping album, of course.
They had one that I think was a little bigger, yeah. So it's today, actually, in music history, 1973, that Dark Side of the Moon hit the top spot on the U.S. charts. So it had been released about 6 weeks earlier and finally hit number one in the USA on April 28th, 1973. And that was impressive because it was, you know, a bit of an experimental album, and they weren't sure how it was going to land. And it did very, very well. It went on to spend an unparalleled 741 weeks, not consecutive, on the Billboard charts. Just to translate that, that's 14 and a half years, Mike, that this album stayed in the top 100 Billboard. So obviously a hugely iconic record, one that, you know, is consistently identified as one of the best albums ever created. And I would agree, it is fantastic. I like The Wall, though, too. 14
and a half years on the chart. Incredible stuff.
Something that I just can't imagine ever happening again. Like, I just don't see an artist having that kind of staying power in this day and age.
We think back to one of the most influential bands in music history. Of course, that would be the Beatles. And in some respects, it all started for the Beatles on This Week back in 1963.
It kind of did. They hit number one for the first time on May 2nd, 1963. So their hit From Me to You, written by Lennon and McCartney, hit the top of the charts in the UK. Now, it took a little longer to get some traction in the US. They didn't hit number one in the US until two singles later in 1964. But they did start to gain some traction in the US. From Me to You, while it was number one in the UK, it charted at 116 in the U.S., so gradually gained some traction for the Beatles. But, yeah, first number one for the Beatles was This Week in Music History in 1963, and it was all uphill from there.
No question about that. I mentioned before the break that a highly regarded artist and their signature iconic song, I would argue that anyway, was released on This Week back in 1956. I'm, of course, talking about Johnny Cash.
The legendary Johnny Cash, yeah. So I Walk the Line became his first number one Billboard country hit and remained on the chart for 43 weeks. 43 weeks was pretty impressive back in 1956. Sold over 2 million copies. So big hit for Johnny Cash, I Walk the Line. I remember when they introduced it as a gimmick, or a song for Canada Trust here in Canada when they first started to have ATMs. The I Walk the Line was the theme song that they used. Something people don't know about it, that progression, that very unique guitar chord progression that makes up the signature part of the song. Johnny wrote that after listening to, so he used to carry around a tape deck, a tape recorder, and record a lot of the songs he was writing. And one day he decided to play some of his chords backwards and see how they sounded. And that's where he came up with that iconic guitar piece for I Walk the Line by playing some of his signatures backwards.
I did not know that, but I love to hear that because it's part of what inspires me about music, right? We think of I Walk the Line, we think of Johnny Cash, all kinds of different things. And yet the artist himself and what he attempted to do in order to make new sounds, create the music, etc. That's great stuff.
100%. Yeah. Just you know, I think it happened sort of accidentally, but still, you know, you draw inspiration where you draw inspiration from. So it's a great story for Johnny.
In the 1980s, I was never really sure how I felt about this guy, Brian. I'm not sure I loved him. I don't even know if I liked him a lot, but it's a pretty interesting piece of trivia connected to the chart-topping single for Robert Palmer.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. Love-hate thing. Robert Palmer put out some stuff. I mean, it was hard to ignore. You know, it was everywhere. Some of those songs from that solo record were just overplayed. And of course, Addicted to Love on May 3rd, 1986, topped the U.S. singles chart. And that song was just, you know, it was everywhere. And it was used in advertising. It still is. It still pops up from time to time. But the interesting thing about Addicted to Love is it would become one of the very last 45 RPM singles to receive million-selling status in the U.S. So it got gold certification. But it was kind of after that the life of the 45 single met the life of the dinosaur. You know, it was something that we didn't do anymore. People didn't buy cassette single 45s, and it just kind of went by the wayside. So Addicted to Love was one of the last ones that was actually a million seller.
It's hard to imagine, and this just goes to show how old I'm getting, because the 1980s feel like yesterday. Granted, we're pushing almost 40 years ago to the week, but it seems quick that all of us, like 40 years ago, we had 45s in our music collection, and now they're like, you don't even think about them. And you talk to a lot of young people today, like, what's a 45?
Yeah, I remember I still have quite a few 45s from when I was a kid, because, I mean, it was economics for me. I couldn't afford an LP when I was 9 or 10 or 11 years old. That, you know, $7.50 or $8 was a little bit too rich for me at, you know, a buck a week that I got for allowance maybe. But you could always afford a 45 if there was a song that you really liked. So you'd go to your local record store, you'd go to a department store, buy a 45 single. And I still have some of mine, and I remember when, you know, bringing them out, and my kids in the 90s were kind of like, how do you play this? And I was like, we play it on a record player. What's that? It's like, okay, now I feel old.
Yep, we are, but it's always fun taking these trips down a musical memory lane. Brian, as always, thanks for being here this morning.
Love it, Mike. Have a great day today.
You too. Bye-bye.
Go Rangers.
Go Rangers. Brian Allison joins us, our musicologist friend, on This Week in Music History. Don't forget, check out the Facebook page, subscribe to it, follow along with these tidbits and so many more. The Facebook page is the same name, This Week in Music History. You get to hear it every Monday morning at 11 here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just thinking on This Week in Music History with Brian Allison, and I noticed that some of those dates for This Week in Music History carry us into May. Oh my goodness, we are flipping the page. Can I still say that, flipping a page on a calendar? Is that reference even remotely understandable anymore? Because we just look at our phones for the date, I think, right? Anyway, it makes me think that later this week we will enter the month of May. In fact, we're going to enter the month of May on Thursday. And that made me think, so thanks to Brian with This Week in Music History. Follow the Facebook page, by the way, same name, This Week in Music History. Brian joins us every Monday morning at 11 to take a little musical trip down memory lane. And since he sparked this memory or reminder with me, Thursday is May the 1st. And it is on that day that I am able to share with you. Yeah, it's a secret for now. I can't, and I want to. You know I want to, but I can't. I honestly cannot give you the details. However, what I can give you is the exact place and time that you need to be, the when and the where, to get all of the information that I currently have that I'm not allowed to fully share. I can tell you that it's pretty big. It's pretty darn exciting. I think anyway. I think you will too. There's an early bird involved in it, you know, the one that always gets the worm. And I think the most exciting part about this, no matter who you are, is that it can put cash right into your pocket. That's not a bad thing, right? So I've got some big news to share that's pretty exciting. Cash in the pocket. The early bird is involved in all of this. That's about all I'm allowed to say right now. But I can give you all of the information on Thursday morning. I wish I could give it to you before then, but I cannot. Thursday morning, however, at 9 o'clock, when we start the show Thursday, I can give you the rest of the details. Or, in the words of the legendary Paul Harvey, the rest of the story. So, Thursday morning, 9 a.m., please be right here on 570 News Radio, and I'll give you all of the details about my big, exciting secret that has to remain a secret until Thursday morning at 9. But I promise, you have my word, I will tell you then. An update from the 570 News Center, and then David Drewe is here with Drewe's Views coming up. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Now that cat couldn't spell to win a bet, but he carried this battered notebook full of his poetry. More soul per square word than the Lord's Prayer. He was the kind of guy that called a spade a shovel, and a violin a fiddle, and a lady ma'am. And I don't even know why I think of him now. Maybe because he never told me a lie he'd have to apologize for later. Because he'd speak to a guy straight, eyeball to bloodshot eyeball, like he'd never even had a secret.
That's our friend David Drewe, owner, Negotiating Change, Government Relations and Stakeholder Engagement Strategies, and the host of Drewe's Views every Monday morning at 11:30. Mr. Drewe, good morning.
Hey, it's 11:30 now.
It is 11:30 now. You're here.
You know what? We should actually get this over with then.
What's that?
The Drewe's Views thing. Since I'm here and it's 11:30, let's go.
Let's go. It's voting day. It's election day. And you have hopes for what? Who? The Tories and the NDP.
Well, it's the one hope for them. Because the poll numbers do not portend good news for either one of them. But in the case of the Tories, there is this one hope, and it's faint hope. I'm not predicting this by any means at all. But if they do surprise tonight, it's going to be because the nature of the voting coalitions has shifted so much that the poll numbers are going to be accurate, perhaps, but the riding by riding projections are going to be radically off because, all of a sudden seniors are voting Liberal and the kids are voting for the Conservatives. When you're your 338 candidate or Eric Grenier, that's a much harder swing model to predict unless you actually are down to the demographics of what are the age groups in this poll-by-poll analysis. So that is the one, if there is a surprise nationally, and I'm not saying that means the Conservatives win, but if they do outperform, it's probably going to be because this radical shifting of the coalition since the last election just makes who swings on a 4% change in a riding useless. And for the NDP, it's a similar sort of thing where they have their demographics and boom.
How do you define success if you're the NDP, though? That's a big question, and I'm sorry just to drop it on you, but really, it looks like it's just saving the furniture.
But it's almost one of those trick questions where you're like, well, how would you define success for the NDP, David? That was not the question you asked me. It's how will they define, or how do you define success if you are the NDP?
Right.
And, was it his first election where Jagmeet Singh lost seats and called it a win? If it goes the way it's expected, he loses his seat. They lose party status. I don't know how you put lipstick on that. I don't know. I mean, for everybody, it's, you can always say it was the perfect storm. But, I mean, honest to God, if Mark Carney gets a supermajority, or anything but a supermajority, a majority, but I don't even know what a supermajority is, but that's what Jagmeet Singh's been warning us about. Mark Carney's supermajority. But on the other hand, he's also said that it was more important for Canada to stop Pierre Poilievre than to elect NDP. So, maybe they could call it success if Mark Carney gets a solid majority, even if they lose party status themselves.
I am prepared to be very surprised tomorrow, later tonight, and very surprised only insofar as what the polls are telling me is going to happen, because I'm having a difficult time rationalizing all of it in my mind, David, from the massive lead that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives had. And I know there's no longer a Justin Trudeau. There's no longer a consumer carbon tax, et cetera. And the enthusiasm that comes with a new leader. And sure, maybe we're concerned about things beyond our own borders in this election, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I get all of those things. I don't get the 40-point swing that we're seeing here from the Conservative lead to the Liberal advantage. It's just, I can't. I can't.
I think the Conservatives were at around 42% when I was talking to you, and you asked me, how do they keep this going? And I said, they don't need to keep going. They just need to keep the points they have. They don't need to keep growing. And they ended up getting to about 47. And I don't think you, me, Jenny Byrne, Pierre Poilievre thought that they were going to end up with 47% of the popular vote. But they're still up there where you're looking at 39 or 41. That's not insignificant. In any other election in the past 100 years, no, I think it was in the 50s, where you last had the two parties with this much share of the popular vote. Like, this is a singular situation. It's not so much about the Tories' drop. It's about, we could have seen this coming a long time ago, I'm guessing, when, in hindsight, when you looked back at when the Liberals were dipping below 20% at points. But the NDP weren't getting any of it. And then all of a sudden, as soon as the Liberals became credible, the NDP not only did not get back what the Conservatives had stolen from them, but then the Liberals started greeting their lunch too. It's a very different electorate this time than it was last election. And that's the only thing is, like, I'm expecting something to be interesting, but I have no idea what. It's just young kids are voting Conservative. The elderly folk are voting Liberal. That's a bit of a change from the past few elections. And, normally it's the Conservatives who are, like, if the Conservatives could apply their legendary get out the vote effort at the notoriously apathetic young voter, that could be the silent swing they get right there. But, the young people are notorious for not voting reliably.
Darn those kids. Okay. I want to read this next headline you gave me verbatim. I was the first dude she slept with, but now she pees when I get too close. What am I doing wrong? Dr. Dave, do you have an answer?
Well, no, I'm the one asking the question.
Oh, right. I need more detail before I can answer, sir. 5 cents for the psychiatrist, just like Lucy on the Peanuts.
Honestly, I kind of want to hear advice from the callers before we tell them any more details, but no, we are babysitting my father-in-law's dog. And she was a rescue puppy that transferred through us to him.
Okay.
So one night before she got to go stay at Granddad's, she was sleeping in my bed with me. And we were just fast buddies right from the very beginning. Now, that was a few years ago. And now that we're babysitting her, every time I approach her, she turns tail, pees, whimpers a little bit. And, I don't want to say that that's a me and a ladies thing, but, maybe I should lose the beard. Like, I don't know where to go with this. But I got to tell you, it's really bothering me because, seriously, I thought we had a special relationship.
You thought, but
I thought we'd bonded, but she's moved on to the new treat delivery service. And
yeah, she experienced it differently, David.
Yeah. No, honestly, though, she has never been around other dogs. She has barely been around people because he lives so far out in the country and he goes out. It's not often that people visit him. So this is a whole lot of change for her, being away from him, being in a new place, and 2 dogs. But geez, it really hurts my feelings.
I can understand why. Don't humanize them, those dogs. That's the one thing I've learned of the very few things I've learned when it comes to being around the animals.
Anthropomorphize. Oh, I thought I was going to be smart and use a big word there, but I couldn't pull it off.
That's very good. Very good. Also, don't humanize them.
Anthropomorphize?
Sure. I'm not even going to try. I know what you're saying, though. I got my very first C in university in anthropology class. So there you go. Okay, let's talk about the local campaigns, what they're up to today. There was a lot of effort expended this weekend by the Conservative Party to remind people if they want to vote for change, they should vote for blue. I had some feedback this morning that was none too favorable. I figure, whatever. It sounded like somebody who was just upset with the Conservatives in general, but they did a good job of making you aware of them on Saturday.
Yeah, it's honestly, it kind of feels like on election days or at certain key points, I'm not going to name the party, but there's a certain team that have people programmed to do the call-in shows and do the anti-conservative rants so people will hear them on voting day as they're driving to work or thinking about voting, etc. I mean, if you've got the time for that, why not? Like, no, you know what I mean? You've got people who don't want to leave their house and and to be fair, I don't even know that it's party organized. Most of the time, it's like signs getting vandalized. It's not the parties doing it. It's some over-enthusiastic supporters. But what are they doing today, eh? Like, this is the neat thing. Most of the campaigns I was involved in, I was all by myself finishing off Harold's speeches. And then, so what I would end up doing is I would have probably 30 pages worth of text. But all we would do is sit there and it's like, okay, so it's a conservative majority, cross out this section on a conservative minority, cross out this section on a liberal minority, cross out this section. Oh, okay, Peter Braden, Stephen Woodworth, and Gary Goodyear all won. Okay, cross out this section on them losing. And you just keep eliminating the possibilities until you are here. And then you just take that one last look and it's like, yes, it does fit. Yes, it does fit. Boom. But that really is not significant. That was cool. That was what I got to do by myself. But the real work is done by the people who are getting out the vote. And there are some crazy stories you will hear from campaigns. It's like 5 o'clock, you're calling somebody and they're like, yeah, I meant to vote, but I can't leave the kids. It's like, okay, we'll babysit your kids.
No.
Yeah, we'll babysit your kids while we drive you to vote. Driving people to vote is so common. It's just like, no, don't worry about it. We'll come and get you. The stories about people knocking on doors, like this is just it. Nowadays, it's all live on the phone. So you'll hear stories about people knocking on doors and saying, yeah, I'm here because one of you hasn't voted yet. And ladies insisting, no, we voted. My husband and I went together. He's like, yes, but you have a son? Oh, yeah, but he voted this morning. Well, ma'am, no, I can tell you right now, he has not voted yet. And she's like, I don't believe you. And you leave. And he's like, but before you're 2 houses away, you see all of a sudden them pushing the kid into the car and driving away. Like, you have all these crazy stories. So, yeah, it used to be you would have this list and you'd pick it up at like 9 in.the.morning and you'd see who had voted already at the advanced polls, etc. And you would just work through that list, knocking on doors, leaving something behind, knocking on doors, leaving something behind, knocking on doors, leaving something behind. Then you'd take a break at noon. And then you'd go out and redo the list again because some of them will have voted off that first round. So you'll have a smaller list to deal with. And in the meantime, there's also people calling to find out if there are issues. Oh, we see you haven't voted yet. Do you know where to vote? Do you have the information you need? Da-da-da, da-da-da. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, stop doing what you're doing and stop at this house and give these people a ride to the polls. Okay. And that is the real machinery of the get out to vote system. However, in order for that to be effective, you have to have the votes ID'd. So that's all that work where people are knocking on your doors in advance of election day and you're slamming the door in their face. They are very, very grateful to you because that's one less door they have to pay attention to on election day. The best thing you can do is leave them with, if you don't like the party, you leave them with a very, very good impression of you, but you say you don't want to sign, and you take a lot of their time. That's the best way to disrupt a campaign. Suck their time.
Yep. I've heard this before. I've heard that some people use it as a strategy because they want to suck up that time from the volunteers. David Drewe joins us every Monday morning, 11:30 for Drew's Views. I wonder how Justin Trudeau is feeling today. And is there a case to keeping Pierre Poilievre as leader of the Conservatives? Well, when he wins tonight, of course. We'll continue our conversation with David Drewe. Drew's Views on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Mike Mondays, 11:30, David Drewe joins us for Drewe's Views. David is the owner of Negotiating Change, government relations, stakeholder engagement strategies. David, he alluded to it earlier as well, also a former federal Conservative Party staffer. So let's keep our attention on Ottawa, David, to some degree anyway. Justin Trudeau, how's he feeling today? Like the party that got resurrected the moment he stepped away from it.
Well, you know, there's that part of it. There's the how much capital. Like if he had just given up on the carbon tax earlier, and then the first thing that Mark Carney does is zero rate it. So there's that part of it. But also just he hung on because he insisted. And I have every reason that I believe he believed he was the only person who could beat Pierre Poilievre. He believed he could, at worst, hold Pierre Poilievre to a minority. But Mark Carney's going to have his own majority. So, you know, even he's doing better than Justin Trudeau thought he was the only person who could do so well as. I'm butchering that grammar horribly, but I hope you... Can you explain to the listeners what I tried to say? As
good as Justin Trudeau thought he could do himself, Mark Carney is doing even better.
Ooh, way to put the horse before the cart.
There
Thank
you
go. That's really... So, you know, Justin Trudeau's sitting there and he's got to be thinking... Oh, geez, you know, if I'd have resigned earlier, how much pain could I have saved? But then it comes down to, and it comes up again in the next topic, but, you know, he really did leave at the perfect time. If he'd have left 6 months earlier, would Mark Carney have had the, I don't want to say honeymoon, but the barrier-free, accountability-free campaign that he's managed to have. And I'm not begrudging him it, because seriously, if I was 20 points ahead or however far, or pardon me, 3 points ahead, 20, 30 seats ahead in the projections, I'd be running the front-runner campaign too. You know, that's what he's running, is the huge front-runner campaign. It's a peekaboo campaign. You don't begrudge people who do that. Doug Ford did it all through the provincial campaign too. I didn't criticize him for it. I said it was good strategy. So that's the spirit I'm taking here.
All right. Final couple of minutes. Let's talk about Pierre Poilievre. You call this the case to keep Pierre. So are you assuming a loss for the Conservatives?
Yes. Yes, I am. And I'm only assuming a loss for the Conservatives because that's what everything is saying. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to say, oh my gosh, I am the whisperer here. But every poll projection out there has still the Conservative ceiling higher, or lower, pardon me, than the Liberal floor. So, but if he keeps his seat, and that's the big if in all of this, but if he keeps his seat, there is a good case to keep him. If they come through at 40% in the vote, 39% in the vote, you know, at that Stephen Harper majority level, and then you look at it and you think, well, what did it take to beat us? And it was the perfect storm. It wasn't just Mark Carney. It was Justin Trudeau leaving exactly as the Trump timing came along, and Mark Carney coming in at the perfect time. All of this perfect storm. Any other time, that would have been a majority. And Mark Carney will have a record after 4 years. And a lot of the barnacles of Justin Trudeau are going to start sticking to him remarkably quickly. It's like Kathleen Wynne. Yeah, she got her time, but she didn't get all the time that Dalton McGuinty got. You know, his barnacles started sticking to her remarkably fast, and the same will happen. And if you've got a leader who's demonstrated he can pull out 39% of the vote, is Donald Trump going to be imposing crazy tariffs next time to play into Mark Carney's hands and allow him to take days off from the campaign to be prime minister? You know, it's not the same. There's a good case that, you know, Pierre Poilievre brought us so close on his first run. He increased our vote count massively. And it wasn't so much that he scares people, but Donald Trump scares people, and the timing. And if those things go away, all of a sudden the NDP go back to their normal levels. The Bloc go back to their normal levels, and the Conservatives, 39%, wins.
39% wins. It's going to be a really interesting night ahead. And we've got the case to keep Pierre. David, always enjoy your time. Thanks for being here.
I like the fact that you let me speak into a microphone.
I do. Shockingly, here comes.
I could stay for some calls today, too, if you want.
Do you want to stay for calls today?
For a little bit, yeah.
All right, David Drew's going to stick around. He wants to hear from you on Rant or Rave. Drew's Views every Monday morning at 11:30 on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
And this is your opportunity to talk back. If it's on your mind, we want to hear from you. Mondays on the Talkback Hour, it's Rant or Rave. Rant because you're upset, rave because you're happy. You can do either of those things by calling us at 519-570-2545. Star 570 from your cell phone, or long distance toll free at 1-800-570-5715. And our good friend David Drewe has decided to stick around a little bit longer before going to cast his ballot and join us for Rant or Rave today. Glutton for punishment, David? What's the idea here?
This is fun for me. It's totally random. I have no idea what's coming. Like, it's very different for me doing this once every month or so, whereas you, it's every day. I have a very different view. It's fresh for me.
It is. And you can get a fresh view from David when you call in to Rant or Rave. Jane is going to start us off this afternoon. Good afternoon, Jane.
Oh, hi. This is Jane. I'm glad to be on your show. It's my first time. And I'm doing a bit of a small rant and a rave. And it is political because it is election day. So I just wanted to say that I have been concerned by Poilievre's sort of aggressive attacks on the Liberal Party, and especially Mark Carney, when he has been a really stellar civil servant who worked as Governor of the Bank of Canada, Governor of the Bank of England. He's also had a lot of experience as an economist, having his PhD in economics.
Do you not care about Mark Carney's attacks on Pierre Poilievre?
Well, yes, but he hasn't attacked him to the same degree that Poilievre's attacked him. Now, Poilievre's sort of main message was change. We don't want another 10 years of Trudeau. But I'm really concerned that we'll have another 10 years of Harper, who really was very bad for the civil service especially, which nobody ever appreciates. Now, I understand conservatives want small government, but the public servants are really valuable. They're the ones that do the research, save our lives in a lot of different areas, and we can't afford to always have them cut back. And they did. Poilievre complained.
Can we afford to have them increased by 40%, though?
Well, the reason I think it was increased that's a good question. And sometimes, I'll agree, there's always maybe too much. I don't know if he just made that comment and had his research backing him up. But Harper also cut back the service. He cut back the Department of the Environment in half. He silenced the scientists. There's a very good article in the Smithsonian about that. And they were warning the American scientists what Trump would do, which is what he did to Harper closed a lot of the science libraries. Another conservative prime minister sold Connaught Laboratories. If we had our Connaught Laboratories, we would have been able to make our own vaccines for COVID.
Actually, that's not true. That lab was never capable of making the, MMA vaccines, the new vector vaccines. It might have been.
Not been able, not at that time, but they could have been.
Assuming the government was going to put a whole lot more money into it to make it capable of that, you're putting a whole lot of assumptions onto what would have happened.
Well, you're right, but selling it they also sold insulin at a very low price to the rest of the world. So
did you just vote for NDP then, maybe? It sounds like Liberals 10 years bad, Conservatives 10 years bad. Why don't we just vote for the NDP then, Jane?
Oh, well, because I'm not saying that the Conservatives are necessarily all bad, but they also mislead people into what they're saying. because Poilievre kept saying that he wanted to hear about the assets of Carney, and he has agreed to the conflict of interest from the ethics commissioner. And Poilievre, from what I read, and his deputy also invest in Vanguard, FTSE CDA index, and it's one of its top assets is Brookfield. So he's also indirectly investing in Brookfield.
Do you know what an index fund is?
Pardon?
Do you know what an index fund is?
Yes.
And you think owning Vanguard Index Fund, I forget how exactly it was named, is the same thing as owning stock options?
Well, he does invest in it.
He invests in an index fund which mirrors the stock market.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Jane,
So,
I got to get to some other callers here.
Okay, I just wanted to know that sometimes they are very misleading, and I think they attack more than he has. I think he's been...
I think you were just misleading when you tried to equivocate Mark Carney's holdings in Brookfield with Pierre Poilievre's. Well, I think that was horribly misleading.
Well, I read it. I read it, and maybe my source wasn't good.
Oh, no, they do both own. It's just the nature of the ownership is the issue for Mark Carney, where he owns stock options, and if their value goes up because he gives them sweetheart government deals, he profits immensely. Pierre Poilievre has stock in it through an index fund. There's a huge difference between the two, and to equivocate them and bring them in the same sentence is doing a disservice.
Okay, so I guess my main point is that Carney, to me, is a more experienced person, obviously. He's had more time. He's 60 years old, and he's done an excellent job in a high-profile field. And if we want to save our economy and save our country, I think that Mark Carney is more experienced at this point in time.
All right, Jane, I got to run on that point. I'm so sorry because we're right up against the clock, and I have to take a break. And, you know, in a nutshell, David, people are, well, it doesn't sound like Jane is conflicted, but there's a lot to sort through to make your vote today.
Oh, absolutely. And I picked her apart on the fact, but everything she said at the end is, I think that, cool power to her. And I can never tell people what they think is wrong.
Absolutely. Well, we can't.
Well, I can tell them the facts are different, but their opinions are never wrong.
Bingo. David Drewe is sticking around for some calls today on Rant or Rave as we continue the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. All right, we got ourselves off to a rousing start with Jane, a first-time caller to start the Talkback Hour. As you might expect, lines are getting busier in behind her, so let's get right back to the phones. Norm, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike, and just want to speak on a comment you made this morning about what Trudeau's thinking. I'm going to give you a thought on what I'm thinking. He was our leader that was well respected around the world. He was a man that put a carbon tax in to try and help with the world problem with our environment and what's going on. Was that correct to do? I think so, but it just ended up being his demise. And these people that run around with flags with F. Trudeau and all that, I think they should just move to the United States, be a hard society. I want a gentle society that care about people. I remember this attack ad that the Conservatives had out this year where they go, Carney, you're a little sneaky, aren't you? And they put this when he laughed. And that was on a comedy talk show that brought him in to talk about how he's going to work against Trump. So that's the attack ad said. I think our last caller, I think the Conservatives are a little tougher on that kind of stuff. It's more Americanized, and I don't like it.
All right, Norm. Appreciate the call and the sentiment. And interesting, David Drewe, on the Justin Trudeau reflection. I've been wondering for quite some time when the book comes out, perhaps the first of them, what tale will be told of Justin Trudeau's time as Prime Minister? I'm very interested to find out.
Does he have his deal signed yet? I don't know. Because honestly, I think the biggest thing is, well, what's the order of books? Is he speaking first? Or are other people like Jody Wilson-Raybould and Bill Morneau, are there going to be a couple more of those books coming out that he's going to have to factor in as well? When he writes his autobiography, I think he will be talking about the 50-50 cabinet. I think he will be talking about drinking water and the relationship with First Nations. And I don't think he'll think about this, but I think he should think about the child care tax credit that he brought in.
Norm really can get behind your idea of a gentle society, the one that you want. And I'm not a fan of attack ads either, but that day has passed for now. Zafari, good afternoon. Rant or rave?
Good afternoon, Mike. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Mike, I've been voting 2 times for Conservative, for Stephen Harper. And then that time everybody was saying, oh, he got too much power, let's change. But we forget that he was, during the recession time, he was handling everything good. People could buy a house, go work hard, pay, and the weekend go to beach, have some party, you know what I mean? Normal life. And then we change it to, I feel guilty, I vote for Liberal the first 4 years. Then I change it back to Conservative. And I want to make long story short that people have to think that, you think about the Carney, he has being what they call, he worked for Bank of England, whatever.
Yeah, he's the governor, yeah.
It doesn't matter what he does. He did not succeed, right? He did for England, not for Canada. Do you want to pay carbon tax for what? $500, $400 every month you want to pay extra carbon tax? And then you want your kids to be little kids at the age of 8 or 9 that he should know that he can change his gender on that young age.
Well, so do you think that Mark Carney is going to bring back the carbon tax if he's elected?
He will. I promise you he will. But what I hate about Liberal now, because they can say a kid can change his gender, which is 9 and 10 years old, and taxpayer pay for that.
No, Zafari, hang on. I don't know where you're getting that from. Zafari.
Kids are, 1 second, please.
No, Zafari, you can't talk nonsense though.
Okay, but I'm going to one up his nonsense if I can.
Sure.
Because the National Post actually printed this story, and the court has ordered that the Ontario government has to pay. Now I forget what the order is. Oh yes, they are going to leave the penis, but install a vagina. The court has ordered that this is publicly funded health care.
Okay.
So you know what I mean? I do not think this is the Liberal Party, but I do think it's very fair to say this is the result of people who've been listening to the Liberal Party.
or this is the result. Who wrote that? Who was behind the article? I'm going to find it now. Ding dang it, you National Post. Got to be like that. Ernie, good afternoon.
You never know what you're going to get on a Talkback Hour.
Amen, brother. Amen.
That's what makes it so good, you know?
Yeah. For who?
Well, I guess you have rougher days and better days more than others. It all depends, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? I guess how you take it. But I voted today. It was seamless. It was easy. It was great.
Was there a lineup?
There was. I went at about 10 o'clock this morning, and there was about 20 people in the small town of New Dundee, and a lot of young people, which was really, really cool to see. So that was good. And then just a couple little thoughts here. As far as, whoever this next prime minister is going to be, I'm going to say I don't care if he's mean at all, as long as he makes life more affordable, the crime stops in Canada, people have hope again, and I'm not going to have him over at my house for dinner, so he doesn't have to be polite. If he wants to be mean, but he gets results, that's what I'm looking for. Guys,
bingo.
Have a great Monday, and God help us all. Help Canada. Thank you.
Thanks, Ernie. Bingo. That's
bingo.
Okay.
Yeah. I want results, but I just showed for the people who are wondering why we're a bit distracted. I found the headline.
Ontario must pay for surgery to give trans resident. Okay, so this is one person, both penis and vagina, according to the Ontario Court of Appeal.
Oh yeah, it's only one person, but somehow this is public health care where we've ended up. It's not just that you...
But this is not policy by any Liberal government.
No, but you could say it's the end result of.
Could you though?
Yeah.
Okay, you can say that. I'm going to read the rest of as Paul Harvey would say, time for the rest of the story. And we continue the Talkback Hour. Rant or rave, David Drewe is with us on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I promised David Drewe, who's sticking around for some phone calls, that before he leaves, which is in just a few minutes, he will get to hear from Andre today. Oh, David, you lucky man. Andre is with us. Hi, Andre.
Wicked. Last time he was running out the door. That's so nice of you. So if my magic polka dot rabbit there, Poiliev, becomes our next prime minister, will you be the finance advisor for him? That's my question to you.
Oh gosh, no. I'm squeamish. You know what I mean? I love my wife. I love my dog. I would never perform surgery on either one of them. I would not want to hold the knife to do the cuts we need to do to our economy. I want the cuts, but I can't hold that knife.
I'll hold it.
And that's why I love you. I love your show. I mean, I love your transparency. You're like your ad. You're straight up forward. And that's why I would vote for you, but, it's too much on your plate.
Too much on David Drewe's plate for Andre to vote for him. Let's squeeze in one more before David has to go. Jason, holy cow, you in a wind tunnel.
Yeah, well, I just want people to remember we can't afford another Kathleen Wynne, Dalton McGinty thing when they tried putting lipstick on a Liberal pig. And Mark Carney, we got to remember he was the economic advisor for Trudeau, and he's using Trudeau's cabinets.
And Harper.
Think you're getting any change? Better think twice.
All right.
Yeah, I actually will give Mark Carney a fair bit of credit. It's all the Liberals running for re-election who have done 180s and now profess to have become everything they hated. They're the ones I have trouble with, not the people who are running for the first time.
I think, though, it is a fair enough argument because Liberal's going to Liberal. Yes, we're looking at a different, much like Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party was different than Jean Chrétien's, for example. But I think it is fair to say, eminently fair to say, that if you vote red, you are essentially signing up for something at least similar to what we've had for the last 9-10 years.
I do not expect their commitment to pipelines, to internal energy security and internal trade to last as long as their commitment to the carbon tax. I think the passing fancy is going to pass and the need for real change is going to pass them by, and they're going to go back to the short-term spending and buying votes.
Great. Buying votes. With what money again? I have a post on X. I want to say a tweet. Is it still a tweet? Voted in Kitchener Centre at 11 a.m. Zero lineup. Walked right in. Ernie said it was a short process in New Dundee. So David Drewe, go enjoy casting your ballot today.
It's my civic responsibility, and I'm going to be holding my nose.
Be a good... Really? You're going to hold your nose?
I'm going to be holding my nose. I have no good choices.
All right. Be a good citizen like David Drewe. Get out and cast your ballot today. And by all means, continue your participation in the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. It's Rant or Rave here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. It's a very busy day, and it's a very busy show for busy people. Thank you, busy person, for spending some of your time with us here on the program today. Really do appreciate it. Love the conversations. And this hour, my most favorite of every day, open lines so we can hear directly from you. Because if it's important to you, it's important to us. Mondays make it the Rant or Rave edition of our Talkback Hour. Let's get back to the phones. Mark, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. Farsley, are you pumped for tonight?
Buddy, I am pumped in so many ways. I get to vote. I get to go to a playoff game. It's the Rangers and the Knights. It's Poilievre versus Carney. It's the best day ever, my friend.
You're a lucky guy. Mike, I've got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Has any team ran the table undefeated all the way through?
In the OHL playoffs?
Correct.
No.
Oh, boy. Do you think it might happen, Mike?
No, because the Kitchener Rangers have not run the table this year. They're going to come back against London. You know that. Come on.
Well, I hope so, Mike.
I know. Listen, London is, as they say, a wagon, a really good team.
I know.
They're 10-0 in the playoffs. The best in the OHL was 14 straight wins to start the playoffs. The Ottawa 67s did that back in 2019.
So nobody has done that before, Mike?
Best record in the OHL playoffs, 16-2.
Okay, and right now, boy.
Right now, London is 10-0.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know. Okay, Mike, good luck tonight. I'll be listening to you.
Thanks, Mark. Really appreciate it. Don't worry about it. In the famous last words, not even last words, in the famous words of our bus driver, Mike the Moose Reeves.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. That's for then. Right now, you just have to worry about the next game for the Kitchener Rangers, okay? That's tonight. If you can't make it to the rink, pregame coverage starts at 6:30 right here on your home of Kitchener Rangers playoff hockey, 570 News Radio. Kyle, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm just a little bit caught off guard, I guess, in a way. You got a hockey player, former hockey player, that ended the career of another hockey player, and we're kind of giving this guy all the attention still in today's world about his new job as a coach. Do you think that's all right?
I do.
I don't. I'm sorry, but I don't. I think if you ended somebody's career, I mean, poor Steve Moore, done, no NHL career after that, and we're giving this guy we're praising this hockey coach like he's a martyr.
No, without who praised him and said he was a martyr.
Well, we're all giving him the attention here.
Okay, well, he's become the new coach of a team in Cambridge. And let's just say, for example, so when did this incident that you're talking about?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. So if somebody kills somebody and they go and serve their time in prison and then they come out, then what do we do with them? Never give them a job?
They have a criminal record.
Okay. It's been 20 years.
It doesn't matter. If they still have a criminal record, they can't get a job if it's 20 years from now. If you kill somebody, that's okay. You're saying
I'm not saying that's okay. I'm just saying even if you do something as awful as that, eventually you get out of prison and you go back to a life. So here's a hockey player.
I'm not giving any sympathy for this guy, Mike.
I'm not asking you to give him sympathy.
I don't think that this is right, but that's just me. I mean, I'm a hockey guy through and through.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty old school and strict when it comes to this stuff. And I will not change the way I am of how old school and strict I am when it comes to this stuff, and I don't think that it should happen.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying that.
All right.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for the call. This is the problem I have. Nobody is calling the man. So Todd Bertuzzi is the new head coach of the Cambridge Redhawks, and Todd Bertuzzi joined the show this morning to talk about being the coach of the Cambridge Redhawks. Nobody said, "Oh, Todd Bertuzzi, you walk on water." Nobody said, "Oh, Todd Bertuzzi, you're a martyr." Nobody said, "Oh, poor Todd Bertuzzi, you should feel sorry for him." It was 20 years ago. And now the man's going to get a chance to coach a junior hockey team in this community. You don't have to like it for sure, but let's not get too carried away in how it's being positioned. This is the hiring of a hockey coach. The Cambridge Redhawks, as a private organization, decided that's who should coach their team. I do find it a little difficult that all this time later, the man's never supposed to work anywhere near hockey again. He's not supposed to have a job in hockey. I don't know. I guess in Kyle's eyes, not. For me, it's a long time ago. At some point, you've paid the price for it, haven't you? And then you get to move on with your life. And that's what's happening here. Daniel, good afternoon. Rant or rave?
Good afternoon. A little bit of both.
Okay.
So, one, credit to Conservative Party as the only party where the members have the power to kick their leader out. That's why they've had so many leadership changes in the past few years. The other parties are stuck. Liberals couldn't get rid of Trudeau even if they wanted to until he decided it was time to go. The rant is a little bit about I don't think we have a Conservative Party or sort of right-wing party. Our federal Conservatives are actually what Liberals used to. They're a centrist party.
What about the PPC? Maxime Bernier, that's a Conservative Party, the likes of what you're talking about, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of the right wing. They're just don't have any traction, right?
Well, maybe that's because Canadians don't believe in that right-wing philosophy enough.
Probably, you're probably right, and I'm one where, I've immigrated to this country. I've always loved the balance, and I've actually considered moving out of this country over the last few years because it's reminding me too much of the country, the communist country I grew up in. We're headed down towards the Soviet era communism.
Okay, well, listen, Daniel, I appreciate the call and the thoughts on that. And it's not an uncommon sentiment. I would say it's rare. heading towards, social era communism or Soviet era communism. I don't think we're there. I don't think we're close to there. But I do understand that our left side of the spectrum-ness has gotten further left. I feel as though this particular election is bringing us back closer to the middle, no matter which side you're choosing, red or blue. That's my take on it. But obviously, we like to hear yours. And Daniel shared his. You can do the same as Rant or Rave continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. On Mondays, that Talkback Hour is the Rant or Rave edition. Let's get right back to the phones. Joe, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mike. Yeah, I'm not sure where Kyle was going with that holier-than-thou diatribe. Let it go. Just, get over it. But I'm a little flabbergasted by all these liberal voters that are coming out of the woodwork. I honestly don't understand it, Mike. Have you forgotten the last decade? And we all know why they all voted for Trudeau, because he had nice hair. So now they're voting for Carney because he looks distinguished. Like a liberal vote, there's no functioning logic center behind a liberal vote. So that's where I'm going to leave that alone. But one more last thing, Mike, do you think they have a chance tonight?
Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't have believed it. This seems like a different kind of impossible, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. But I think they have a chance tonight, and a very good one, in fact.
Well, go Rangers. I mean, I wouldn't have believed it after going down 3-0 against the Spits, because that's a 2% chance historically of coming back, and they did it.
There you go.
So, go Rangers.
Thanks, Joe. Good to hear from you. Appreciate the call. Mayor Jake, good afternoon.
How are you now?
I'm good, and you?
Oh, not so bad. So I read a statistic. I already emailed you the question, but I want your opinion on it, about young Canadians voting Conservatives and boomers voting Liberal. And I always find that as a younger Canadian, we always seem to, the violence and the crime seems to affect us more. And I'm not going to say it 100% affects us more. Obviously it's a pretty equal split, but I think that's why it's we feel the pinch, we feel the cost of living going up, like rent. Like when I first got into the rental market, my wife and I were paying $800 a month for a one bedroom, and now we're paying $1,800 for a two bedroom, which is still a good price. But I just feel like boomers, they cashed it, and they're on good pensions, and to them, I'm not saying they don't feel it. The seniors do feel it, but I don't think the majority do, as young Canadians are the majority that feel this pinch.
Mayor Jake, appreciate the call. I'm going to drop the call because your phone's not perfect, but I'm sure you've still got the radio on in the vehicle. And I'm glad you sent in the emailed question, too, because it made me think of something I haven't gotten around to talking about. And I acknowledge, look, this is anecdotal. However, why are young people voting Conservative, older people voting Liberal? I think that Jake is on to something here insofar as more older people than young feel it less, the economic impact, right? They're a little bit more secure with investments, housing that they've long since paid for, et cetera, pensions and so forth. And then younger people feeling that affordability pinch. The other thing, and this is, again, I'll grant you anecdotal, but I had a conversation with young voters a few weeks back, and I was actually surprised to hear that they had, because they went to an advance poll and voted Conservative. The main issue, drugs and homelessness. And what it made me think of was the kind of city that they experience. If we think about where our homelessness problems and addiction problems are most evident, where would that usually be? In a downtown area, right? Where for many of us who are a little bit older, living out in the suburbs, we wouldn't see it every day. We wouldn't be walking past it every day. And maybe for these young people, it becomes their reality. And they look around and think, well, I don't like the feel of this city. I don't feel safe in this area. That, again, anecdotal, and that's my observation of the anecdote. But made me think maybe that's why young people are leaning Conservative, because this whole tough on crime idea appeals to them because the way they experience the city is much different than the way people my age experience the city. Out in suburbia with a nice big yard, I can just go on my back deck and chill. I don't have to walk past people in the throes of addiction or tents on a street corner every day. Maybe. I don't know. But that was just a thought that I had from my anecdote. Johnny, you're on the Talkback Hour. Good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. I just wanted to respond to the Bertuzzi, I guess, a bit of a bash that previous caller did. I agree with you. Hockey's a rough sport. We all know that. And those situations happen a lot where people get hit, and just by fluke, the guy got hurt and his career is over. It's not really supposed to happen that way, and the guy shouldn't be blamed for forever. I'm sure he carried a lot of guilt, and we need to have forgiveness and compassion for him. And by the way, for London, how do you take a elephant down? One leg at a time. So go Kitchener.
Attaboy, Johnny. Well said. I got to agree with that last part for sure. And look, I know it was awful. Maybe a different kind of violence than our game usually sees with that incident all those years ago. But again, for how long? For how long do you have to bear that before? Anyway, I agree with where you're coming from on that, Johnny, and thanks for weighing in on the Talkback Hour today. We'll continue here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Thanks to Susan for the email to Mike at 570news.com. I'm sitting at Bright Up Center right now, and I'm encouraged to see so many millennials going to vote. I don't care who they vote for. I'm just happy that they're out voting. Young people getting out the vote. Thanks for that, Susan. And make sure you get out to vote as well. And drop me an email anytime. Mike at 570news.com. Christine, good afternoon.
Good morning, Mike. And go Rangers.
Go Rangers.
Okay, that one caller who was calling out the saying where are all these liberal voters coming from? Well, I don't care who votes for who, but I didn't think that was right.
Well, listen, appreciate the call, Christine. Joe is pretty passionate, and he's pretty passionately conservative. I don't think he crossed any lines. He's just very passionately conservative, and he doesn't believe there's a logic center to a liberal vote. He was basically making the point. He thinks that people voting liberal tend to vote for substance or style over substance. He has nice hair. He looks more distinguished, etc. That's just Joe's opinion. And opinions make the world go round, and this show. Tom, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Everybody's trying to tell you that they can deal the best with Trump. Trump has an agenda, so it doesn't matter who you elect. It's the way he wants to run it. So I don't think any of them are qualified more if that is the basis, that they're telling you. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but nothing good is going to come of it.
All right, Tom. Nothing good is going to come of Donald Trump and his agenda, and nothing good will come of anybody that we elect trying to intervene or interfere in any way with that agenda. I think it's a fair point. Certainly, Donald Trump wields a lot of power. I would like to see, though, in our next leader, and listen, if that's your motivation for casting your ballot for the person that you believe is best positioned to protect us against Donald Trump, that's fine. I mean, to Susan's point, just happy to see people going out to vote. But I think what Tom is getting at, too, like there are issues here domestically that we certainly could and should be looking at. Affordability, housing. How about breaking down interprovincial trade barriers and making our own economy more insular and more robust? I think there are certainly gains to be made in that department. I'll just put it out here before we call it a day. I still am open to being surprised. I know what all the polling numbers are saying, but surely to goodness, it's going to be a better conservative showing than the polls are telling us it's going to be. Right? I guess we'll find out in the morning. We'll also find out in the morning if the Rangers are down 3-0 in a playoff series again, or if it's a 2-1 series because the Rangers win tonight. You'll find that out when you join us for pregame coverage starting at 6:30 right here on your home of Kitchener Rangers playoff hockey, 570 News Radio. So we've got the game, we've got the election results, and we're back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. My name is Mike Farwell. Bye for now.